The dynamics are set for the biggest storm of the month is on the way. If we take a look at the water vapor imagery this morning, we had that storm complex just yesterday that moved across the southern plains and into a good part of the southeast. That brought some heavier rains, severe weather, even some larger hail and tornadic activity into East Texas and portions of the southeast. We'll have another piece of energy that's going to be trailing behind that one, but the main energy is building out west. That's the storm complex that I'm greatest concerned that's just now coming offshore off the west coast. That will produce more heavy rain along the west coast, heavier snows across the Intermountain West. That will swing across the southern plains and form a negatively tilted trough that will set the stage for more severe weather and even possibly a severe weather outbreak on Saturday. And then that energy swings up the East Coast going into Sunday with more severe storms. So if you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button and you're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. And I would love to reach 250,000 subscribers by the end of the month. And you can help me get there by subscribing to the channel and following all my daily content. So here's the setup on the surface map. In that purple shaded area, now this would likely be tomorrow. This is a winter weather advisory already in place for portions of the Northeast. Now this is for some freezing rain that could set up, likely just a glazing or two, but sometimes that could be the most treacherous travel when there's just a glaze of ice on the road. So this doesn't start until Saturday morning, but that will likely extend into later into the afternoon. So there is a possibility of seeing some freezing rain. There's the rain this morning with bringing some light rain showers across southern portions of Illinois, getting some heavier amounts into Kentucky as well as into Tennessee. There's the warm front that will set the stage for a lighter severe weather threat today over portions of the southeast. There's the storm reports just yesterday, had some larger hail just south of Dallas into the southeast Texas. But then there's the tornadoes that broke out yesterday. As of right now, we do in fact have 8 reported tornadoes from just yesterday. They will likely be adding to that total. And then that gray area, that is your fog advisories with a lot of dense fog highlighted over Dallas and Oklahoma City, back into Topeka, all the way up into Des Moines this morning, getting into all the way further north into Minneapolis, heading into the Dakotas. So a lot of heavy fog across the central U.S. And then there's the next storm system that we'll be keeping an eye on. They already have a winter weather advisories and winter storm watches and warnings in place with more heavy snows for the Intermountain West. So for later on this afternoon, we'll be watching that storm complex, another piece of energy. Now the atmosphere has been worked over a great deal, so I'm not expecting too bad of severe storms, but we could see some marginally severe storms back into the New Orleans area, back into portions of Mississippi, getting into Alabama, and then lighter scattered rain up into Tennessee, Kentucky, as well as into Illinois, back into Indiana, getting to portions of Missouri. Then that swings all the way further north into Wisconsin, as well as we'll be watching our main complex coming off the west coast. Heavier rains still extending off into Washington and Oregon, Northern California. You'll miss out on most of the system in Southern California, most of the desert Southwest. And then there's the snow that's likely going to be flying across the Intermountain West. So for today, it's just likely going to be a marginally induced activity with this next storm complex is moving in. This atmosphere has been really worked over a great deal yesterday. So just looking at some marginally induced thunderstorms and some larger hail possibly with this activity, some damaging winds further into central and southern portions of Mississippi as well as into Alabama later on this afternoon into the evening time frame. But as we shift into Saturday morning, there is your freezing rain. That's why they do have some winter weather advisories out. Now I know this doesn't look like much, but whenever you start to see kind of a glazing of ice, a lot of people just kind of let their guard down. They're not thinking the roads are that bad. So there will likely be some black ice and some slick spots up here across upstate New York getting into portions of Connecticut and Massachusetts, as well as into portions of Pennsylvania. So we're not expecting much, but just a glazing of ice does a lot of, and you typically have 10 times as many accidents when you have a kind of a glazing of ice on the roads than you do have a quarter inch of ice, because you're obviously letting your guard down pretty quickly with just a glazing of ice. But when it's a quarter of inch of ice, you're going really slow. So you're definitely going much faster than you want to be going up there when you do have a glaze of ice in a road. So just be on high alert of up there into the northeast of some freezing rain heading into Saturday morning. So as we get deeper into Saturday morning, we'll have light rain showers likely starting out in Oklahoma and portions of Texas, but these would likely turn severe heading into the afternoon with the main storm complex that we're going to be eyeing, with more heavy rain again extending for a good part of the northwest. But here's the main system that we'll be tracking as this dynamic trough that will be coming in, and unfortunately it does in fact go negatively tilted again, and it's the right side loaded. This is where you have all the warm sector. You got the moisture return back into the Gulf of Mexico, and that could likely set the stage for a big time severe weather threat, and likely the biggest threat of the season that's coming up on Saturday. And that piece of energy just likely continues to be amplified and then highlights itself across the East Coast during the day on Sunday. So we've got a pretty dynamic setup coming on shore as we head into Saturday. So here's the setup as the atmosphere likely reloads again. So you likely have some lighter rain showers in the morning back here. Heavier thunderstorms with turning severe just east of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Going into East Texas, you can see the soupy air mass well into the 60s, if not portions of the upper 60s further all into the coast you live. So this area is in high alert for a severe weather outbreak potentially, but the dew points surge and the moisture levels that surge all the way up into Arkansas, back into Kentucky, and then scattered activity will extend all the way into Illinois as well as into Ohio and West Virginia. So at the lower levels, we do unfortunately have some shear. So you've got the negatively tilted trough and then shear at the lower levels. And that is always concerning because the atmosphere will be rotating, originating in East Texas and especially into Louisiana, back into Mississippi. Definitely a huge concern. And that's why the Storm Prediction Center has already highlighted that enhanced risk. So I think the storms fire just east of Dallas likely turn severe in East Texas again, and then really intensifying once they get into Louisiana, back into Shreveport, as well as into Lake Charles region, and then really intensifying likely after the 5 o'clock time frame in and around, western areas of Louisiana, back into Mississippi, getting into Alabama, into the overnight time frame. Unfortunately, this looks to be another nocturnal threat with nighttime tornadoes along this region. Lighter activity as you swing further off north into Memphis, back into Nashville, as well as into the Huntsville region, getting all the way up into Knoxville. But there is your tornado threat. So in the green shaded area, you still got a 2% probability. So you can still get a tornado or two within this region, and even possibly a strong tornado. It could be some isolated reports, but the probabilities increase as we get into the Shreveport region, as well as into Lake Charles, back further south into New Orleans, Mobile, back into the Birmingham region. But they really intensify, unfortunately, with this yellow shaded area and this dotted shaded area. That is your probability of a significant tornado risk of one of those EF2 type tornadoes or stronger. We had a pretty strong tornadoes just yesterday in the El Campo region, and that storm complex extended for a good period of time on the ground. And then this with the hail system. So we could be looking at some more possibly stronger tornadoes on Saturday, and even some long track tornadoes is probably not out of the question, unfortunately, with a lot of dynamics starting to come together. And especially if we look at some of these helicity tracks. So this is the combination of that low level jet, that shear at the surface where the atmosphere will be elevated, and these storms turn more surface based, so that's why we do have that a more larger hail threat and the more significant tornado threat likely just south of the Little Rock region, but getting into East Texas, but especially extending into Louisiana. Look at the colors and look at these longer storm tracks. That is insinuating that some of these storm complexes could have some larger hail, extending for a pretty good long hail swath. And some of that activity could drop some tornadoes. And unfortunately, this could have some longer track tornadoes that could be on the ground for an extended period of time. So that's why we do have that huge area of yellow shaded and dotted shaded area of extending the dynamics for potentially some larger tornadoes and longer track tornadoes and some bigger tornadoes as well. And this likely might even be upgraded by the time we get to tomorrow into a moderate risk. So this definitely looks to be a very significant threat coming up for the southeast on Saturday. So I think it all gets going. We have lighter rains in the morning time frame, and then I think storm complex blows up across east of Dallas there. Getting into East Texas, this is likely at noon, 1 o'clock. Stronger activity into Arkansas by then, getting into Louisiana, as well as into Mississippi. And then I think this really starts to intensify as we get into the nighttime time frame. This is around 8, 9 o'clock. We've got large, discrete supercells further south. This is the more tornadic activity. And then, but the more widespread activity, you still could get some tornadoes within this sector, but less likely, more of a damaging wind and some larger hail with some heavier rains. But it's going to be definitely a bumpy evening up down there into the southeast, and that gets going all the way into the overnight. This is likely 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. You'll still have supercell thunderstorms on the tail end producing some tornadoes even at the wee hours of the morning. So this is definitely a dangerous night ahead that likely starts tomorrow afternoon, extends well into the evening time frame and well into the overnight, and then getting into the wee hours of the morning. Those heavier rains lift further north as that low pressure center continues to deepen and lift northeast. So you'll get the scattered rains back into Illinois, Indiana, as well as at Ohio, back into West Virginia. That'll be on Saturday night, but going into Sunday, it just kind of reloads, right? So as the atmosphere continues to move across the east, these activities will be moving northeast. So we'll have a renewed threat for more severe storms, lighter thunderstorms from Tampa southbound, heavier thunderstorms with some severe back into Tallahassee, the Jacksonville region, extending into Montgomery, back into Atlanta, and then heavier thunderstorms with some larger hail and some isolated tornadoes as you extend into Columbia, back into the Charlotte region, getting into Raleigh, as well as into Greensboro, back into Roanoke, Virginia, could be under the gun for all three modes of severe storms. So it definitely appears to be a dangerous day ahead for Saturday and even into Sunday, as that larger complex will be highlighted even into Sunday night, extending well north by then into Indiana, back into Ohio, getting to Pennsylvania, with all rain as the warmer air really takes over for this time of year, extending all the way into Canada. And then I think that just extends going into Monday morning along the East Coast. So these spots just keep getting inundated with systems after systems. So you'll have the freezing rain on Saturday morning. This will likely be replaced with heavier rains going into Sunday morning, going into Sunday afternoon, Monday morning across the Northeast as this continues through. And then we'll be watching another complex with some colder air coming in from the Pacific Northwest. That'll be a change over to snow into Montana, back into Wyoming, as well as into Colorado again, heading into your Monday time frame. But the breakdown for the winds with the storm complex that's coming in, it's definitely going to be a bumpy ride over the next 48 to 72 hours. So we watching the main complex with some higher winds that come off the West Coast. That traverses across the Intermountain West, so we'll have some higher winds through the Rockies down there into New Mexico, and then it intensifies again, likely east of Dallas, setting up some stronger winds. So this is outside of the severe threat. Obviously, if you have a severe thunderstorms, those will be pumping 60, 65, 70 mile per hour winds with those isolated supercells. But it's really active as it comes up the East Coast heading into Sunday. And I don't think the winds really even die down until we get later into the day on, Sunday night heading into Monday, both time it really starts to kind of die down and settles down by then. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch the next update while I protect you before and after the storm.